Central government, the office of the Sultan was the most important in the administrative system. He was the ultimate authority for the military, legal, and political activities. The Sultan was the assigned by the number of the department and the official in is the administration. The post of the naib was the most powerful ones. The next to him was the wazir, who was the heading the finance department called the Diwani Wazarat. The military department was the called the Diwani Arts. It was the headed by the Aziz I Momalik. He was the responsible for the recruiting the soldier and administering the military department. The Sultan himself was the commander-in-chief of the army. The military department was the first set up by the Balban and it was the further improved by the Alauddin Khilji. The Diwani Risalat was the department of the religious affair. It was headed by the chief Chandra Grant was were the made by this the department for the construction and maintenance of Moscow, tops and the madrasa. The head of the judicial department was the chief Qazi. Muslim personal law of the Sharia was the follow in the civil matter. The Hindus were the governed by their own the personal law and their cases were the dispensed by the village panchayat. The criminal law was the based on the rules and the regulation made by the Sultan. The department of the correspondence was the called the Diwani Insha. All the correspondence between the rules of the official was the dealt with by his the department. Local administration. The provinces under the Delhi Sultanate were called the Iktas. The provinces were divided into sheikhs and the tax division was the Paragana. The Shia was under the control of the Shikdar. The Paraganas, the comprehension where the number of the villages was headed by Amir. The village the remainder the basis unit of the administration. The village headman was known as Mukaddam or the Saudhri. The village accountant was called the Patwari. Economy. The land was classified into three categories. Ikta land, land assigned to the official as the Ikta instead of the payment for their service. Khalisha land, land under the direct control of the Sultan and the revenue collect were spent for the maintenance of the royal court and royal household. Inam land, the land assigned of the granted to the religious leader or the religion institution. The presently paid one third of their produce as land revenue and sometimes even one the half of the produce. The Sultan like Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Tughlaq took the effort to enhance agricultural production by providing irrigational facilities and by providing the Takabi loans. During the Sultan's period, the forces of urbanization gained momentum. The number of the cities and towns had gone during this period. India exported a large number of the commodities to the countries on the Persian Gulf and the West Asia and also to the South Asian countries. The overseas state was under the control of the Maltese Afghan Muslim. The inland trade was dominated by the Gujarat Marwari merchant and the Muslim Bohra merchant. The cotton, textile, and the silk industry that flourished in this period. The sericulture was the introduced on a large scale, which made India the less the dependent on other the countries for the import of the raw silk. The paper industry had the ground, and there was an extensive use of the paper from the 14th and 15th century. Other the craft like the leather making, the metal craft, and the carpet weaving the flourished due to the increasing demand. The system of the coinage coinage had also the developed during the Delhi Sultanate. It would miss the used the several types of the silver tanks. One silver tank was divided into 48 zitals during the Khilji ruled, and the 15 zitals during the Tokle rule. Gold coins or the dinars became the popular during the region of the Alauddin Khilji after his the South Indian conquest. Social life. There was the little sense in the struggle of the Hindu society, structure of the Hindu society during this period. Traditional caste system, dominance of the Brahmins, the subserv- subservient position of the women was the prevalent. The Arabs and the Turks put the system into India, and it became the widespread among the Hindu women in the upper classes of the North India. The Muslim society remained divided into the several ethnic and the racial group. The Turks, Iranians, Afghans, and the Indian Muslim developed the exclusive, and there were no intermarriages between this group. The Hindu convert from the lower castes were also not given the equal respect. The Muslim nobles occupied high office, and the very rarely the Hindu nobles were given the high position in the government. Art and architecture. The art and architecture of the Delhi Sultanate period was the distinct from the Indian style. The Turk introduced the arches, domes, and the lofty towards of the minarets and decoration using the Arabic script. Someone important the features of the Indo-Islamic architecture are Architect style. It used the arches and the domains from the entrance and the roof. The fillet entrance of the Indian style was the known as Tarabit. Tarabit style. Use of lot of the minarets in Moscow. Indo-Islamic style. They avoid the human and animal figures, which were used in the Indian style. Arabic's method was the use for the decoration. It was the continuous the geometrical patterns, the gel work, extensive gel work was the use to have the sufficient light. The extensive use of the water like pools, fountains, etc. The Garbage style garden uh, for extension the identical gardens. Pietra Durga techniques it the analyze the precision the stones and the games inside the stone wall. Arabic and the Zale work and the Sar work and the Pietra Durga. In the beginning, the converted temples and other structures that dominates into the Moscow. For the example, the quad ul Islam. The mosque near the Qutub Minar in Delhi was the built by using the material obtained from the destroying many Hindu and the Jain temples. But later they began to construct new structure. The most magnificent, magnificent the bolt of the 13th century was the Qutub Minar, which was found by the Aibak and complete by the Iltutmish. Later, Alauddin Khilji added and the entrance to the Qutub Minar called Alai Darwaza. The buildings of the Togol's period was were the constructed by combining a rack and dome. The palaces, the complex called Tugabat, Tugabat and the Kotla fort were the built during the Tughlaqs. The Lodi Garden in Delhi was the example for the architecture of the Lodis. Music. New musical instruments such as the sarangi and rabar were introduced during this period. Khasaro introduced many new the rags such as the khora and sanam. He elaborated a new style of the light music known as qawwali's by the blending the Hindu and Iranian system. The invention of the sitar was also the attribute to the hymn. The Indian classical work Ragadarpan was the translated into the Persian during the reign of the Firoz Dogle. Pir Phodan and the Sufi saint was one of the great great musician of the period. Raja Man Singh of the Gwalior was the great lover of music. He encouraged the composition of the great musical work called Man Khatuhal. Literature. The most famous historian of this the period were the Hassan Nizami, the Minhaj us Siraz, Juaddin Barani, and the Sham Siraz Alif. The Baranis Tarikhi Firoz Shahni the contain the history of the Toghlaq dynasty. Minhaj us Siraz wrote the Tabakot Nasari is a general history of the Muslim dynasties up to the 1260. Amir Khasraw 1252 to 1325 was the famous Persian writer of this period. He experimented with the several poetical forms and they created a new style of the Persian poetry called the Sabaki Hind or the Indian style. He also wrote some the Hindi verses. Amir Khusro and the Khazan ul Hutu the spark about the Alauddin conquest. His the famous for the Togle Nama deals with the rise of Geshuddin Togle. The Sanskrit and Persian functioned as link the language in the Delhi Sultanate. Zia Nakashabi was the first to the translate Sanskritic stories into Persian. The famous Rastrangani written by the Kalhan belonged to the period of the Zian ul Abadin. Zian ul Abadin, the ruler of Kashmir in the Arabic Alburanis, the Kitab ul Hind is the most famous work. The Sant Bharati was the famous Hindi poet of this period. Bhakti movement in medieval India. The medieval, the medieval Bhakti movement was the direct result of the influence of the spread of the Islam in India. Monotheism of the belief in the one God, equality and the brotherhood of the man, and rejection of the ritual and class division are the distinctive characteristics of Islam. Monotheism of belief is one God, equality and brotherhood of the man, and rejection of the ritual and the class division are the distinctive characteristics of Islam. This Islamic idea create the profound impact on the religion leader of this period. Sufis. Sufism, Sufism was the liberal reform the movement within Islam. It is the origin in Persia and the spread into India in the 11th century. The first Sufi saint, the Sheikh Islam of the Lahore, started pressing his idea. The most famous of the Sufi saint of India was the Khawaja, Khwaja Mainuddin uh, Chishti. Another well-known the Sufi saint was the Bahuddin Zakaria. Bahuddin Zakaria, who came under the influence of the another famous the mystic Shihabuddin Shurardi. Shihabuddin Shurardi. Yet another famous Sufi saint was the Nizamuddin Aulia, who belonged to the uh, Christi order of who was the mightily the spiritual forces. The Sufism stresses the element of love and the devotion as the effective means of the realization of God. Love of God means love of humanity, and so of the Sufis believe the service to the humanity was the uh, tantamount to the service to God. In the Sufism, the self-discipline was the considered an essential condition to the gain knowledge of the God by the sense of perception. While the Ortho-Muslim emphasizes the external conduct, the Sufis lay the stress on the inner purity. While the Orthodox believe in the blind observance of the ritual, the Sufis consider love and devotion as the only means of the attaining salvation. According to them, one must have the guidance of the peer or guru, without which the spiritual development in the impossible. The Sufism also included the spirit of the tolerance among it is the follower. The other idea emphasized by the Sufism are the meditation, the good action, repent, repentance for sins, the performance of the prayer and the pilgrimage, fasting, charity, and the suppression, suppression of the passions by the ascetic practice. Shankara. In the 9th century, the Shankara started as a Hindu re- revivalist the movement, giving a new uh, ordination to Hinduism. He was born in Kaladi in Kerala. He is the doctrine of the Advaita or monism was to the abstract to the appeal to the common man. Moreover, there was the reaction against the Advaita concept of Nirgura Brahman, God within attributed with the emergence of the idea of uh, Saguna Brahman, God with attributed Ramanuja. In the 12th century, Ramanuja, who was born at Siri Perumbudar near the modern Chennai, the preaches the Vaishnava Vita. According to him, God in Saguna Brahman. the creative process, and all the objects in creation are real but not the illusory, as was the held by Shankara, Shankara Acharya. Therefore, God, soul, matter are real, but God is and the inner substance and the areas are His the attributes. He also the advocate for Purvat Purvatimagar, or the path of the self surrender to God. He invited the down downtrodden to Vaishnavism. In the 13th century, the Madhav from the Kannada religion propagates uh, devoid or the dualism of the Jivatma and Paramatta. The Nibharka and Vallabha Acharya were also other the preachers of the Vaishnavism Bhakti in the Telangana. Vallabha Acharya and he the popularized the Krishna cult in North India. Mirabai was a great devotee of Krishna, and she became the popular in Rajasthan for her the bhajan. Tulsidas was the worshipper of Rama and composed the famous Ramcharitramanas, the Hindi version of Ramayana. Ramananda. The Ramananda was born at the Allahabad. He was the originally the follower of the Ramanuj. Later, he founded his own the sect and the preached his the principles in Hindi at the Banaras and Agra. He was the worshipper of the Rama. He was the first Buddha.